Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Things I've Learned. I'm your host, Lorenzo Melcher, and every week I take you through 5 things I learned in the past week. They could be very simple things or a little more complicated things, or things that could be complicated, and I did the most minimal research possible. So thanks again for downloading this. This is an offshoot of the Nerdball podcast. So if you would like to see the actual Nerdball podcast, that comes out every Thursday on YouTube. So if you're just listening to this episode and not watching, I did add a few things for YouTube. It is, a very minimal PowerPoint, and it's just like one slide for each thing I learned. No big deal. But also, if you'd like to watch me squirm and talk about things that sometimes I have no business talking about, then go to YouTube, just search the Nerdball podcast and subscribe there. So we will get into it. This is, again, Things I've Learned, episode 2. The first thing I've learned is about marathon. So marathon, I thought it was cool. I think it's funny that most of my news or things I've learned comes from TikTok, and I think this is one of them, or it could come from a podcast, another podcast that I listen to. I should probably note my sources when I do these, but it's probably just some other idiot talking about something they shouldn't talk about or have no business talking about. But I am that idiot right now. So what was very interesting to me is the why the name marathon, why it is what it is. And according to Wikipedia, this is what I found. And according to this podcast that I don't remember I listened to, it says the name marathon comes from the legend of Pheidippides. Again, I'm an idiot, so I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. The Greek messenger. The legend states that while he was taking part in the Battle of Marathon, which took place in August or September of 490 BC, he witnessed a Persian vessel changing its course towards Athens as the battle was near a victorious end for the Greek army. He interpreted this as an attempt by the defeated Persians to rush into the city to claim a false victory or simply raid, hence claiming their authority over Greek land. It was said that he ran the entire distance to Athens without stopping, discarding his weapons and even clothes to lose as much weight as possible, and burst into the assembly exclaiming, we have won, before collapsing and dying. So, marathon gets its name from the Battle of Marathon. Also, I read somewhere, and I don't know how true it is, that the distance that he ran was 26.2 miles. But again, this happened so long ago, who knows, right? Also, this is what happens when you don't train for a marathon. You die. So be careful out there if you're trying to run a marathon. There's obviously a bunch of different debates and all kinds of stuff on like, what did this really happen, or did he actually go? Hey, I'm not going to go down all those rabbit holes right now. This is an episode of Things I've Learned. This is only my second one. If you'd like to know more, you can send it to me and I can say it to somebody else, or just Google it. So this is the thing I've learned I found interesting was the name marathon came because was born because this guy ran from the Battle Marathon, allegedly 26.2 miles to tell Greece that they had won. So number 1. All right. Number 2. Also, I don't know some of these. I could include more pictures, but I'm afraid that if I do that, some of them could be gross. Like this one, number 2, as you're looking at your screen, Flystrike. Flystrike was definitely a TikTok thing. So if you don't know right now, TikTok is doing this. The trend right now on TikTok, and I don't know the name of the Muppet, but it's some Muppet that has his mouth is wide open. It's like he can't believe what he's hearing or saying or looking at. And then people just text us on the screen about these horrible stories. So the story I heard from Flystrike was this girl had a pet rabbit, and it kept like chewing its mouth, like its teeth were grinding and all this stuff. And then finally she went, and I will warn you, it's gross. She looked in its mouth, and there was just a bunch of maggots in its mouth. So I learned about Flystrike, or myiasis, or Flystrike. It's basically the infestation of the body of a live animal by flower larvae, which is maggots. They grow inside the host while feeding on this tissue. Although flies are most commonly attracted to open wounds in urine and or feces, soaked fur, some species, including the most common flies, the botfly, blowfly, and screwfly, can create an infestation even on unbroken skin. And that's what I saw. So this girl talked about it in her rabbit, and they ended up having to put it down. But then it led me down a rabbit hole on TikTok of other animals, and it was sheep got it. And you can see, like, he was shearing a sheep, and you could see all these maggots underneath. So I know this is a gross one, but it's things I learned. There's no like limit on my knowledge of things I'm learning. Like, I don't stick to non-gross stuff. So that's another thing I learned. Number 2, Flystrike. Sorry, it was about maggots, and it is what it is. Even the word maggot, I feel like, is gross. Maybe you learned that. Maybe you don't like the word that word. So I'll stop saying that and move on. Number 3, 28 days later. So if anybody knows, if you're a fan of 28 days later, there's also a 28 weeks later, and now a 28 years later is coming out in 2025. So the reason I put this on here is because I went to go find 28 days later because I was excited. I was like, all right, cool. I haven't watched these movies in forever. I think this one came out in 2003, right there. And I found out I could not find it anywhere to stream. It was nowhere to be found. And I would Google, hey, where to find 28 Days Later streaming, and it was nowhere. So I had to, and I thought I found it, and it was just a trailer. So I had to Google, and apparently it was not available. It was sold to Disney. Basically, Disney was the parent company, but for whatever reason, it was financed. The way it was financed a certain way, they didn't have the rights to it, so it was just not on any streaming. So I finally found it. It got put back on, I think, because 28 years later is coming back out. So like, all right, yeah, well, we can put this on. And I watched it, and it was good. And I was just graduated high school when this movie came out. So it was a cool movie. Almost 20 years ago, or over 20 years ago, that this movie came out. It was great. So if you haven't seen it, it is available. I believe I watched it on Amazon. So it is available to watch and stream if you want to. And then again, 28 years later, it comes out in 2025. Probably should have had that info ready for you guys. But if you are fans of this series, then you already know that it's coming out. So let me see. If you bear with me, I will Google this real quick. June 20th, 2025 is when 28 years later comes out. I guess the third movie in this trilogy that spans over 20 years. Everyone thought, wouldn't it have been cool if it was exactly actually 28 years later? We waited this long. I guess what's another few years? But anyway, 28 Days Later is now available to stream if you would like to do that. So the fourth thing I learned, and if you're looking at my screen, it just says parking, and it's a picture of a parking lot. Even if you feel like you parked the best parking job you could do, somebody's going to be upset about it. This recently happened to me. I was at a flag football game, dropping my son off, and backed into a spot that someone had pulled through a spot. So so that way they could just pull straight through. So I backed into a spot so I could do the same thing. I was in my spot in the lines. Then I was sitting in my truck because I was waiting. The game was 20 minutes before the game started, so I was waiting. A woman comes up to my window, and you always feel like you have these things in your mind, how they're going to go, or how you think they're going to go. And if it was me, how would I have handled it? So if it was me, I would be like, excuse me, could you pull up a little bit? I got to get chairs out of my trunk. Or I would have moved my car to get chairs out of the trunk. Also, if you know you have to get chairs out of an SUV trunk that folds out, don't pull through. have it facing out so you can easily get it. Well, this woman came up to me and goes, excuse me, you got to pull your truck up. I can't get my chairs out. And I was kind of blown away. Like, all right, well, first of all, don't talk to me like this. In my head, I said that. Secondly, what I actually said was, okay, but you could have said it nicer. And then she walked away and said, excuse me? And I went, you heard what I said. Now, I don't know if I handled it the best. I did pull up so she could get her chairs out, and then nothing else happened. I did think about, though, backing my truck back up closer to her vehicle, so she either had to pull her car out to get her chairs in or wait for me to leave. I did not do that. I just left it as is, and everything was fine. We did happen to be walking out at the same time. I had my son with me, and I did not say anything to her, and she did not say anything to me. I did give her a good stare down as she was driving away, but other than that, it was fine. But the thing I learned is you could do everything possibly that you could be correct in this, and this goes, I guess, for a lot of things, and someone still is upset at something you did. So that was the fourth thing I learned: parking. Last thing, championship. Number 5. Here's what I learned. My son's flag football team won his championship. He got little rings. He was really excited. What I learned is he did not get a lot of playing time in the championship game, which is fine. They played everyone pretty evenly all year, and I'm fine with that. And I know as a coach, when push comes to shove, they're going to play the better, quicker players, and I get it. What I learned is some kids don't care that much. I didn't bring it up to my son. He didn't bring it up to me. I figured if he had an issue with it, he might have said something to me or my wife, and he didn't. And I was fine with it. Again, I understand what's going on. Some parents might not get what's going on or might not like it. And, maybe they're right sometimes, but for the most part, they're not. And I was fine with it. I went to the coach, congratulated him. He got his ring like everybody else. He still played in the championship game. It's not like he didn't play at all, and I was fine with it. And I'm glad they won. He was happy they won. He was showing his ring off to his friends and sending pictures and stuff, and they're excited for him. And so the thing I learned is just let kids play their sport. And if they get upset about playing time or get upset that they're not used correctly or whatever, make sure they talk to their coach about it. And a parent should, I feel like, this is just me, I feel like a parent should never go up to a coach and say, hey, here's what's going on. My son thinks this, that, and the other. So your son or daughter should go up to that coach and say, Coach, I feel like I should be playing more. What can I do? That kind of stuff. Handle it that way first. And, that I think that should be the end of it. And then if you have more of an issue, then, if it's something that you think is just beyond him working hard, maybe you feel like him and her are really good. Every parent thinks their child is good at whatever they're doing. I get it. But have that conversation with a coach, maybe after the season, maybe not when you're getting on a bus to leave or in the middle of a game or practice. That's just me. Again, this is my opinion. But, the kid should always go up to their coach to figure out what they can do to get better. Same thing at work. If I feel like I need to get better, I'll go up to my boss, like, hey, I notice I'm not getting opportunities. What can I do? So that's my take on that. And that is the last of my 5 things I've learned this week. So again, if you learned something and would like me to talk about it, and now you get to see maybe a picture of it, of whatever it is on my crudely made PowerPoint, check out YouTube. Anyway, you can submit your things you've learned at thenerdballpodcast@gmail.com. I will get those there, and I will shout you out. Or on any social media, if you're looking for us, you can search the Nerdball Podcast, and we should pop up, and you can comment on there. And again, YouTube, subscribe there, hit that bell, help us out. And my son now has a YouTube page, and I just want to have more subscribers than him. That's all. So help me out there, subscribe. So again, this has been episode 2 of Things I've Learned. Thanks for listening.